Hey guys, NJ here, and today we're having a look at the Horus X10. Now this model from Frsky, it's fairly recent, quite a new model that's out there, and it's sitting in quite an interesting place. Very premium model, sitting around the £300 mark, I guess probably similar, $300-ish out in the States, and it's sitting in that space somewhere between the X9D and the X12. Now obviously the X12 that's a real price jump up from there still, and that was, you know, that's quite, there was a lot of controversy around that transmitter. Some people loved it, some people hated it, but it certainly had a few issues, and it was certainly nothing that I was interested in. I, like many of you out there, are still very happy with the X9D. You know, on OpenTX, it's a wonderful transmitter, incredibly flexible, and of course you can mod the life out of it. I mean, if I just bring mine into view here just ever so quickly in still the limelight, you can see I've gone fairly mod crazy and actually added in things like the 6-position switch. I've upgraded the speaker, added the race gimbal, done my own custom paint job on it, added the modular antenna. I've kind of added all the things in that are now present on this model. So if you've got a Tranison like me, you've already gone nuts with the X9D and modded it. There's kind of not really a reason to go up to this one. And of course I am talking exclusively from the mini quad point of view. One of the big things that you'll notice with this, I would say, is, well, I mean, how do you ignore it? This enormous colour display that sits down here. And again, when I talk about from the mini quad point of view, you've got to ask yourself, however pretty and wonderful and functional that is, how useful is it? I mean, there's nothing broken about the way OpenTX works. It's been refined over time like a fine wine. It's just got better with age. And they're really, you know, once your goggles are down, you got all your information in your OSD. How relevant is that? You know, so these are questions you certainly have to ask yourself if you are toying with the idea of going for something like this. That said, it's a beautiful thing. It's very nice, and I think the price point, and it is sort of creeping down from where it started, I think is really good, but we'll certainly look more in detail at the operating interface. It does come with its own interface by Frsky, and I've got to say it's pretty damn good. I was expecting to want to flash OpenTX on here straight away, but I actually paused and I thought, there's actually quite a lot of features in here, and I've got to say they've thought out the interface pretty well. We'll go more into that. So much like my modded X9D, one of the things you'll notice, as well as having these two S1 and S2 pots, one which is kind of just linear, goes all the way around, nice amount of friction, nice high quality aluminium knobs on here as well. The S2 has the indentation in the middle, and then the well, this is like the 6-position switch that I fitted to mine, retrofitted to mine, that comes on here as well. And again, all of these things are assignable and usable, and you know, you can go nuts with functionality. You've also got a couple of extra trims in here. We see a couple of bits come over from the X7. For instance, we've got this kind of kind of like a sort of like a D-pad really on a game controller. So this is very similar to what's already on the, is similar to location and feel to what's already on the QX7, but instead of just having the 2 buttons, a page button, an exit button and a settings button, we've now got page up and down button. You've got kind of 4 categories here: model, system, return and telemetry. And then over on the right you've got this nice rotary encoder here, and then an enter switch. I've no problem with that. I really like it. It's really tactile. It works really in a fluid way with the interface. So yeah, I was quite happy to see that in there. We also have these M10 gimbals, which will feel and do feel exactly the same as the M9 and M7 gimbals. Personally, this is one reason why I didn't go for the S. I wanted the 10 because the S model, the X10S, comes with all aluminium 10 bearing gimbals, and they're just a bit clunky, and again they feel different. I really love the feel of the M9 gimbals on my X9D. The way they bottom out just feels fantastic for me. I really like them. Of course, they're the Hall sensor gimbals like these, so they've just got a wonderful feel, and consistency is the name of the game. Certainly for me as a freestyle pilot, I want everything to be consistent. You start changing things, it changes the feel. That will affect your muscle memory, that will take some relearning. If you're going from one transmitter to the other, that could be a problem, blah 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 blah. So you get the idea. That's why I wanted to go for this with the M10s instead of going for the S with the aluminium gimbals instead. Perfectly happy with those, so all good. You have a soft switch here and then RGB LED underneath. The switches, they definitely feel more premium. I mean, the whole thing feels more premium. You've got this nice kind of aluminium plate. You've got these soft rubber grips on the side, very similar to the QX7. They've put the they've used these different types of for these analog trims here, and I've got to say I don't really like those. I mean, do any of you guys use that? Personally, that's more of a thing that I would expect to be used for flaps on a plane than it would be for any use on a mini quad, but you could use it as something for pre-arming, or, you know, I'm sure maybe you've got some ideas for what you'd use that for. But the centering on them is pretty harsh. Like, you only have to go a bit and it kind of snaps back to middle. So I don't actually like the feel of those as much as the original ones on the X9D, which were more like this, and they just felt a lot smoother, nicer, felt like a bigger travel as well. So if I were going to have a preference over those for flying fixed wing, I'd probably prefer these, if I'm completely honest. But yeah, they're there and they're okay. The switches are nice. They definitely feel more premium. Really nice mechanism. I like them. Absolutely no issues with those. And you can see in terms of their positioning, they're at a slight slant, which is very much like the QX7, not in a straight line like they are on the X9D. Now, that was kind of a little bit of a thing for me. I don't know if it'll be for you. Again, if you're a pincher, it really depends how you hold the transmitter. But for me, I used to, on the X9D, I tend to have my middle fingers sitting around here, so that when I fly, the problem is I can't actually get to the extremes of the edges, because it's trapping between my middle finger and this switch. So now I've got to reposition my middle fingers up here so that I can get the full travel and not get in the way of these. This is probably why people like Mr. Steele, of course I'm speculating here, have just simply removed these or removed these outer ones, and I think he's removed a whole ton except for things that he wants. I like all the switches. I like to be able to use them all, so you know, they're staying on mine for sure. But yeah, it's a slight adjustment for me, but I don't really find it to be too much of a problem. But it's, again, something to bear in mind. One thing I really hated on the QX7 that I'm glad to see they've adjusted on here was that the gimbals just seem to be buried so deep in the QX7. Let me just move this guy out the way and show you what I'm talking about. I don't know if you can see here, if I tilt it up, can you see just how far those gimbals are recessed? Really, really long way down. And for me, that just gives me a bit of a, such a strange feel. From where the kind of the top of the surface of the top fascia here is, and where your hands rest, to then how far down these gimbals are, it just left me feeling a little bit disconnected with the quad. I've never really got on too well with that. If I compare that to the X9D, excuse me, then you'll see these aren't quite as deep, but they are still a little bit. But yeah, I found these to be the kind of sweet spot. These feel really nice. Now on the X10, you can see they've addressed that, and you can see it's pretty similar to the X9D in terms of depth. So yeah, those feel much nicer. That's definitely something I would have suggested they change, to not have those gimbals recessed so far into the transmitter, and they've addressed that, and that feels really nice. So the actual feel change between the X9D and this feels really good to me. So moving on, what else have we got? The SD card slot has been located on the underside here. To be honest with you, I'm not sure that's the smartest move. It's okay, but it could do with some kind of protection. On the X9D, it's inside the battery tray, so it's protected, but obviously we've got an inbuilt internal battery here that you can't just slide the back off to get to. Again, we'll go on to that. But yeah, I just feel like that could have done with some kind of TPU cover or something over that, because if you're sitting that upright on grass or anything and you're worried about a bit of moisture getting up in there, I don't know, that's not the most sensible move. Onto the top, you can see we've got the same momentary there, and then we've got this 2-position latch and then 3-position switches on the corner. We also have a removable, which is nice. This can actually unscrew. Now I know this is going to get a few boo and hisses, but they recess this. I can see why maybe they want to recess it, because once this is in, that actually acts as a little bit of support. But the problem is, if you've got an 8 dBi or a 5 dBi antenna, anything larger that you want to chuck on there, it's not going to fit, because this recess here means that this the circumference of this, or the diameter of this, sorry, is too small. So really your only option is probably to deshell this and then get a drill bit and a countersink and do as neat a job as you can of making this hole a little larger. Not the greatest thing to be wanting to take tooling to your brand new X10, but you know, that's something that we have to live with. Now this does actually have, it's essentially got 3 antennas. You've got the external one here, which you can choose to run and select, or you can select the internal antennas. Now the internal antennas, from what I gather, are, if you select them, are going to be in cross polarization as well. So we have one antenna that way, one antenna that way, sort of one this way and one that way. So you can use those. It'll be interesting to do a range test just using the stock antenna like this, just going out in a straight line, and then also using the internal antennas like that and seeing how the two fare against each other. This model also comes with the Bluetooth module in it, and the antenna for that is on the underside here internally, and that is so that you can do the wireless trainer port feature. So you can wirelessly connect to another similar model. You can either to another X10 model, or you can do it to the QX7S, which has the Bluetooth module in. So you can do the wireless trainer and use something like the latch switch here, momentary switch, sorry. Hold that in so that the other person has control, and the minute that they get into trouble you can let go and then it's your quad. So that's quite a neat feature. You've got to decide whether that's a big sell for you or not. Moving round to the back, we have the standard module bay. No new surprises there, just the same as all the other ones, with your 5-pin connection on the back for connecting various modules, TBS crossfire, etc, etc. And then we have, this again was a bit of a shame for me, but they've gone back on this model to putting, if I can get into it, there we go, to putting the ports on the back. You've got the mini USB, which they're sticking with. I guess they stick with mini USB because it's mechanically a little bit stronger than the micro USB, even though many of us haven't got thousands of mini USBs, but we've got loads of micro USBs kicking around. It's got an S port plug here, which is useful if you want to flash your receivers, etc. So that's nice that that's been in there and wired. And then we've got a headphone jack here as well. Actually, I'm not sure, is that the headphone jack? One of these two is the headphone jack, and one of them will be a SIM plug for doing the SIM port. Probably that one, actually. I guess the headphone jack's probably the one down here. So we'll pop the back off and have a look at the inside of there. Not much else to talk about on the face of it. So yeah, let's have a quick look at the internals. So this guy, it is literally 4 screws, 2 down here and 2 up there, and then we can literally just pull this guy away like so, and we should get that off. And what's quite nice is there's no, unlike the X9D, there's no ribbons, there's nothing attached to the back, so the back just comes away nice and cleanly. And then there we have the inside. Now it's always a pleasure to look at the inside of an FrSky transmitter. They just encourage you to open it up and have a look at their wonderful work. You can see everything's sort of really nicely hot glued down so that cables are kept at the right lengths and out the way. Nothing's flapping around, nothing's longer than it needs to be. I mean, it's just everything I like to see on the inside of a transmitter that's done well. You'll notice here what it looks like we have is 2 18650 batteries this time, held together in a little clasp. So I'm guessing, and then it looks like a pretty standard terminated plug as well, JST. So let's just wiggle that out and have a look. Yeah, absolutely. So that's good news. So it's actually a pretty simple replacement should you want to find something of a higher capacity. It looks like this here is a 2600 milliamp 7.2 lithium ion. Yeah, as I said, 2 18650s. So you can see now what I was talking about with this triple antenna on this iXJT module. So you've got these two aerials here that go up into this plastic housing, and I guess this section on the top here that you can see, and I guess that's where we're going to have one antenna run straight down and then one antenna run across, something like that, so that we get some diversity. So we've got those two there, and then this guy running up here to the removable antenna on top. And as I said, you can choose whether to use the internal diversity or the external. So yeah, really liking the look of that. What else have we got here? I mean, it's nice to see things seem to be more separated out into their own little boards. That makes things a lot cheaper to replace. You can see we've got like a 3 stack here. That was a problem with the X9D. One of my internal XJT did go on my X9D, and so much of that backboard had to be replaced. That was really expensive to do. At least this way we've got much more separation of components, which if anything should fail, it'll be a load cheaper to just replace what you need to, rather than the whole thing being on one board. So yeah, nothing too out of the ordinary here. There we can see is the Bluetooth module, which is this guy here, and then we have the antenna running down the side here, around the back of the battery, and then if we come here you can see there is our Bluetooth antenna. So that's nice that it's down the bottom, out the way, and away from the antennas out the top. So well thought out in terms of where to place that. There's a little bit of a closer look. You can see the back of the trim tabs. We've got the vibration motor. Looks like that might be a slightly bigger weight on there. I'm not too sure. We'll have to check that out. But yeah, all in all, that looks really tidy, and yeah, there's not a lot more to say on that front. You can see all the switches are nicely housed up here. Again, all very, very neatly wired. And yeah, all things nicely spaced. It's pretty much a nice thing to look at on the inside. So no complaints from me at all.